Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building brands, businesses, and a career you love with the people who've done it. I'm your host, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into today's story of starting over. Hello, listener. I'm so glad you're here for this episode of Unemployed and Afraid and a big hit of business and brand building inspo from other humans in the thick of it. I'm feeling pretty grateful for the energy this chat gave to me when I was both recording and editing it because my energy has needed a little helping hand lately. I'm finding myself swinging between these big, brave ideas and actions in my own business ventures and then wanting to pull back into my shell like a little turtle, only sneaking out to have a look at my to-do list and feel overwhelmed by exactly how on earth I'm going to do all the things I need to do to grow my business into the next phase. Do you get that? I'm going to guess so, as you're here with me listening to this. So let's get some inspo to keep going and doing things our way together. My guest today is Laura Elizabeth. Laura centers her work around empowering self-love and growth. Now, no matter the business execution, it's all about that self-love and growth for women. And she models that through the power she steps into and the way she's grown to be in love with the process of learning and seeing just what else she can do and how far she can go. And I am absolutely here for that energy. Her story is a lesson in recognizing when it's time for a change, when to move on, and how to allow something new to unfold. We talk about jumping off a cliff into the project, business, partnership that's calling to you, about letting things go to move forward, which sometimes can mean letting people down. A straight up heads up, we swear a fair bit in this pod, and the brand's name for one of Laura's businesses does sound a little bit spicy. It's a name that takes back ownership of a word that should be celebrated. But if you're personally uncomfortable with the C word, let this be a warning to you. It sounds like it. It's not it. Anyway, you've got to listen. You've got to listen to hear this story. I'm a bit of a fan of it. Laura also explains exactly what a yoni massage is if you're unfamiliar. And we touch a little bit on the woo-woo within the context of developing yourself alongside a business, which if you've listened for a while, you know I can get right around that woo-woo. She made me laugh so many times through this, but she also made me feel something energetically, a really nice, uplifting energy, and that is her magic. Just try not to be inspired to step into your own power after this chat, whatever your gender identity. Please enjoy my chat with Laura Elizabeth. I'm here today with the trailblazing changemaker, Laura Elizabeth, director of publishing house Maven Press, who support writers through the cathartic process of writing to birth meaningful, inspiring, and life-changing books into the world with confidence. A multi-bestselling author and publisher, Creatress of Kuntea, spelt Kuntea, my favorite brand name to date, owner of Laura Elizabeth Wellness, and advocate for women's empowerment. I need a lie down after just reading that. Wow. In everything she does, Laura creates intimate experiences for conscious women ready to step into a deeper layer of understanding themselves, to reclaim their voices, embrace and embody their sensuality, and own their personal power. A solo mother of three who runs three businesses, one for every kidlet. I can't wait to hear your story, Laura. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm very excited to hear your story. Tell me, how would your business partner at Maven Press and our mutual friend Jade describe you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think the description that she gave you was a lot more pretty than how I would describe myself. But look, working with Jade and finding Jade as a business partner and not just a mum in the school playground has been such a gift, and we really connect and vibe in the same energy. And I think that that's having a very real and quirky sense of humor, a no bullshit approach to life, and being just super, super honest and down to earth with each other and getting shit done, which is what you want in a business partner, right? Because it's all great having these ideas, but if nobody's taking action, what's the point? So, and maybe compassionate and friendly and kind thrown in when I'm not making jokes about trauma.
we can't joke. What are we doing here? I want to go back a little way. So back before the publishing business, before your other amazing business pursuits, who were you?
I was a good girl. I was a box ticker. My aspirations were to marry, to have my children, to have my house, and to live happily ever after. And the thought of that now gives me fucking anxiety. I ticked the boxes. I did it all. I'm an overachiever. I did all that by the time I was 26. And then I was like, well, was that it? It's okay. Like everything's okay. And there was this moment where I was like, are you happy to live? Like, you're 26. Are you happy to live the next 50 years with an okay life? And I just had this feeling of overwhelming grief. Like, what the fuck have I been doing? Like, who am I? And what's my legacy? How do I want to be remembered? And I really, I've always had an ability to create safe spaces for people, and people, for example, walking up to me in the street and telling me their life story. People have always felt safe around me. And, as an energy worker for the last 20 years, I really enjoy bringing about transformation and healing in others. But I needed to find a purpose. I needed to find a way to use that gift and to integrate it into a life that had a purpose and was able to serve other people. And with that, my perfect little world started to unravel, and I needed to put my money where my mouth was, essentially, and create a fucking life that I love and create a life of service, doing the things that I love and doing the things that help to ignite that spark within others, help to have voices heard, help to create transformation and healing. Does that answer your question? In a nutshell?
I think it does. I think it answers it beautifully. What came first? What business came first? What exploration came first? And what sparked that?
Look, from a very young age, from about 15 or 16, I started sitting in women's circles, and we would do a lot of meditation and psychic development. So that energy work and that mindfulness was very much a part of my life from early on, for my own personal development, for my own mental health and connection. From there, I started Reiki training. So I went through to do Reiki masters. And then once I was a single mother, I was like, well, how am I going to make money off Reiki? How am I going to, this is all I've got. I hadn't had a real job for, I think my son was 7 or 8, my eldest son. So I hadn't had a real job. How am I going to fit this into, the 9 to 3 as a solo parent, trying to create an income? And I needed something else other than Reiki. And I actually went and studied reflexology, which is so funny because it seems like feet is such a different place to, now I work with wombs and yonis and vulvas. So it kind of cracks me up that I started off with feet. It's like, how did I end up here? And the truth of that is that I did reflexology. I was very, very good at it, bringing in that energy work, bringing in the Reiki. And then I fell into fertility reflexology and then into the womb massage. And that's how that progressed. So it looked very, very different. And I had a little room set up in my house where I offered Reiki and reflexology, and we had a weekly meditation and healing circle, and things just slowly evolved from there. So it's quite amazing to think that that was just 7 years ago, working out of a bedroom and hoping to be able to put fuel in my car, for example.
And where did it grow to from there? I feel like this is a somewhat loaded question because I think the industry would have been very new at that time for things like womb massage, and there seems to be a little bit more talked about now. But I imagine back then you might have been quite a pioneer in there. But so tell me how that evolved.
It's a little bit like I found out I was gluten intolerant when I was 19 and there was nothing available on the shelves. And now you go into your local supermarket and they've got
gluten-free city
outfit on. I'm like, fuck you guys. Where were you when I needed you?
Oh my gosh, same thing. I ate primarily plant-based plus seafood, which I call myself a vegan. And yet now I'm like, I can have whatever I want. Like, this is amazing. Where was this when I first started?
And certainly, when it came to womb massage and then yoni massage and, embodiment and sexuality practices and that sort of neo-tantra world, which I do try to err on the side of caution from, but, it was a real taboo space to enter into. And then, stepping 3-4 years later and all of a sudden everyone's a sexuality coach. So again, it's all about timing. And I think the world and the universe opened itself up to me in those moments. You ask and the universe shifts. But it started off going from that room in my bedroom. Then I started renting a room about 5Ks from where I stayed. So there was three rooms there that I rented and subleased out, and we had a meditation circle that started there. Then after 18 months, I took on the whole building and ended up with 13 practitioners working from the space, which was really, really beautiful. Then 2019 came along and kind of put the kibosh on that a little bit, and I decided to sell that business, feeling like things weren't over and I was going to have to adapt and change, and I didn't want to be liable for the rent, essentially. So I sold that business very, very quickly and moved a lot of my practices online, and then set up again from home. This time we had a new home where I had the space to be able to set up a beautiful space from home. And that's when I started to learn and deepen my understanding of women's sexuality and yoni massage and how to really integrate that into a pleasure-led life. And not just the way that we experience sex and the way that we experience intimacy and connection, but how are you brushing your hair in the morning, and what's that little voice in your head, and how do you tie your shoelaces, how do you smell the flowers in the garden, and really bringing that awareness into every day. And that was a beautiful time. Working from home was a really beautiful time to sort of slow down and still have a business that was earning an income. And in that time, I had contributed to a multi-author book, which was super exciting. I'd actually published my first book in 2017 by myself with very little knowledge, and I think I'm still paying that off all these years later. And it was such a beautiful process. I loved the process of cathartic writing, and it really helped me. That it was a lot of journal entries going through my separation and divorce. So it really helped me process, and I loved it. Was a bit of a flag post for me in my own healing. Like, look, I've made this decision, I've moved through it, and here's what happened, and here's what happened to me and for me, and maybe it'll help you along the way. So that was a beautiful process, and I loved the opportunity then of being able to contribute 5 years later to this other book. And then with everything that was going on and work had really become online based, I was like, well, fuck, I have an amazing community of women, the ones who'd come and work from the space, clients, and this beautiful network that I'd connected with over those years. I was like, I'm going to lead an anthology. I'm going to create a book, and reached out to Karen McDermott, who is an amazing mentor and publisher. And she basically was like, yeah, let's do it. I think you have what it takes to be able to pull these people together. And we created this amazing Amazon #1 bestseller. It was so much fun. And then Karen said to me, cool, so you're going to be a publisher now, and I'm going to mentor you. And that's how Maven Press was born. So it all kind of happened at the same time. And it was like, of course, that's what I'm doing. I never get comfortable for too long. I'm always hungry for like, what else is possible? What else is possible? Who else can we serve? How much more can we reach? And so Maven Press is just about to turn 2 years old. And we've got 7 best-selling titles now. It's just been such a fucking amazing ride.
Wow. When you say that you're self-publishing back in the day and they're still paying that off, I just think, oof, that's really scary.
Yeah.
A lot of people have ambitions to self-publish, and
we don't know what we don't know, right? And I just wanted to have that out there.
Yeah. But sometimes you do what you have to do, don't you? And you never know. Without that, it might not have led you to the creation of this business. And you make these commitments to yourself financially, time-based, whatever commitment it is, that you don't quite understand where it's going to go.
Yeah, 100%. I think if I hadn't published Loving Herself Whole, the opportunity to write for Back Yourself would have come up, and we're going, well, who the fuck am I to write? I'm not a writer. Who's going to want to read my story?
You just never know what's going to lead to what. In terms of publishing, I just love that part of your story so much, because I think people often get led into sharing stories in some way, shape or form. And it does just kind of happen and present itself to you, which it sounds like it did in some way for yourself. When you had that spark or that ping of, yes, I am going to be a publisher, I am going to do this. Where did you get started in making it real?
So this is, post creating Rising Matriarch through KMD Books. I had that conversation with Karen where she's like, this is what you're going to do. My role is to make sure that as many voices get heard as possible, and you are a vehicle in which that can be done, and I will help you. And you know that feeling where it's almost like a hot flash where you can feel every cell of your body vibrating, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the next thing. And I think that afternoon I registered a business name, Maven Press. It was there, registered a business name, registered the domain, got to work. And there's a beautiful spot that I like to go and stand barefoot. I'm on this beautiful bush property here. And I love to just go and sit and try and slow my brain down. And that's often where the inspiration and the downloads come in. And very, very quickly, the downloads for Heart-Centered Leadership came in, which was our second book, or our first book under Maven Press. And I put the call out. I just took action, and it was either going to be amazing or not. And I think after all the years of trial and error, after all the years of throwing myself into things, sometimes they've worked and sometimes they haven't. And just not letting fear get in the way and knowing that there's going to be something learned out of it. If it all falls to shit, there's going to be something valuable and something beautiful that's been learned for, my next crazy idea, whether it was publishing, whether, whatever it is. I've learned to make friends with fear. Like every single morning, and this isn't a lie, every single morning I get up, I think whether I'm working in my publishing office or whether I'm working with bodywork clients, I'm always fucking terrified. I never know. It's the kind of work that's never the same every day. I never know what's going to happen. I never know who I'm going to be connecting with. Quite often my bodywork clients or my new publishing clients, I want to be able to serve them so, so deeply. And I have to trust that connection's there. I have to trust that I'm going to be able to show up for them. And it's fucking terrifying, but I do it. And it's always beautiful. It's always perfect. Whether it's 110% perfect or 50% perfect, everybody always gets what they need. And particularly with publishing, at the end of the process, whether it's a 4-month process, a 6-month process, a 12-month process, and you're pulling your hair trying to get everybody's chapters in and trying to get edits signed off on, and you're like, is this book ever going to be fucking published? At the end of the day, when we're holding that book and we have this tangible piece of evidence of the process and the healing and the journey that's brought all of these stories together, there's nothing else like that feeling. And it's so, so worth it.
Oh, I just love everything about that. You've really just tapped into the energy of the podcast, which is we do show up for ourselves terrified so much of the time, just knowing that we want to create something in business, something for ourselves, something that serves, something that lights a part up of ourselves into the world. And you kind of know that it's there, and then you face the actions and the tasks that you have to do. And you're like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel comfortable. I know we talked a little bit about that off air before we hit record, that sometimes you just have to come in to do so. I feel it all the time when I come in to record this podcast. I get a little nervy. I get a little, okay, what's this interview going to be like? Am I going to be on? We're not always on, let's be honest. Am I going to be on? Am I going to be able to, really guide this person through this process? Am I going to stumble over my words heaps? You constantly feel that way, but you just show up anyway. And it does, that feeling that you get when you put something out into the world, no matter what it is so worth the pain. And you just don't know what that's like until you put yourself out there to do it. You just give it a crack and see what comes out.
Chasing that dopamine hit.
Yes. Maybe it's just like we're all really, really addicted.
We've all got
dopamine.
Addictive behaviors and we want the dopamine hit. And
it's so real.
That feeling, and it's something that, a lot of particularly Yoni clients, they come in and I'm like, how are you feeling? I'm nervous. It would be fucking weird if you weren't.
Right.
And then, anybody submitting or sitting down to write and working through their process and those nerves and that fear, I call it the growth zone. When you're standing on the edge of that cliff and it's safe. And what you really want is to dive off that edge and do you fly, do you fall kind of feeling. That's the edge where we can really meet ourselves, I think, in that growth zone. And it's like, fuck it.
Yes, I love that. Fuck it. Always. There's something you touch on there with your Yoni clients. And I think for those who are listening with us, it would be a disservice if I didn't ask you to spend a little while explaining what this service is. And of course, your incredible tea and this offering that you have for people to be able to support themselves too. Can you spend a little bit of time just explaining the service and the process?
Absolutely. So for those who haven't come across the word before, yoni is a Sanskrit word, which basically is an all-encompassing word for female anatomy. So womb, ovaries, vulva, vagina, the whole shebang. There's not another word in any other language that describes everything all in one. And so thus we use the word yoni when it comes to this work. So does that mean that yoni massage is about massaging your vagina? Yes, it does. In plain and simple terms, yes, it does. Why the fuck would anybody do that? And is that even a thing? So many reasons. So many beautiful, beautiful reasons. A lot of clients, they've experienced birth birth trauma or sexual trauma, and they experience a lot of numbness or pain. So it's about reconnecting, getting blood flowing back into their pleasure anatomy, mapping out the pleasure anatomy. How does, this is your cervix. Can you feel it? Is there any pain here? Does it just feel amazing? This is your G-spot. Can you feel it? Is there numbness? Is there tension? And really mapping out those areas, because a lot of the time clients will come to me and they're feeling dissatisfied or unloved or unable to reach orgasm, unable to feel pleasure in their bodies, feel guilt and shame around feeling pleasure in their bodies. And often their partners are the ones who cop it. And my question is, well, if you don't know your own body, if you don't know how your body feels, if you don't know how you like to be touched, if you don't know how to stimulate those areas and create that pleasure pathway within yourself, how the fuck is this poor bastard going to do it?
Right.
And then it's like, because we don't know what we don't know. And I think particularly when it comes to sex education, particularly, in schools, none of it's around pleasure. None of it's around enjoying and exploring our bodies. Can you imagine how different the world would be if women got taught how to explore their own bodies and their own pleasure anatomy and create those pleasure pathways for themselves and create, spaces where they really got to drop in and connect and feel what feels good to their bodies without trying to find somebody to validate it for them. Holy shit, the world would be so different. So yoni massage in that instance, there's a lot of that, a lot of people reconnecting to their bodies, a lot of body shame stuff that comes up, learning how to just accept and love the absolute fuck out of yourself. And it's been a beautiful healing for me too, because every woman that steps into my space, as we're doing the undressing ceremony, this is where each item of clothing that they remove, they're also stating what they're letting go of in the session. Super powerful, super vulnerable, sometimes the hardest part of the entire process. And not one person in that space has been anything other than absolutely beautiful. And so every day I get to walk away going, well, if they're beautiful and they're beautiful and they're beautiful, then holy shit, I must be beautiful. So my stretch marks and my sagging and my wrinkles and whatever other fucking stories that I have about my body, I push to the surface. You can't be in this work without dealing with your own shit, right? A bit like what you'd said off air earlier about, you sitting in this space for your own growth and healing and development. And it's exactly the same with this body work. It's such a beautiful space to be in and to witness women falling in love with themselves.
Oh, I mean, there doesn't really seem to be more of a important mission to have in
It's the
life
missing
and business and career. It's amazing.
100%, the missing link in women's healing. And I really do believe that everyone should have the opportunity to experience it at least once, or, once a year. Like that becomes your annual self-care. Like I need to be reminded how fucking powerful I am and how much of a goddess I am. So on my birthday, I'm booking my yoni massage, whatever it is, but let's take the weirdness out of it. It's weird how not weird it is.
And that seems like it naturally led you to creating your tea. Can you please tell the listener again what your mum would like it to be called?
So yoni steaming herbs, and I've called it cunt tea because I'm hilarious, and also because I want to take ownership of our bodies and reclaiming the words and so on and so forth. And my mother, bless her, was like, can we call it Kuntea? I'm like, well, no. Because that takes away the whole intention and purpose behind using something so in your face and trying to reclaim it. So those are yoni steaming herbs, and that is a process whereby you boil those herbs and then sit over them, whether over a toilet or over a throne, there's many different vessels that you can use. So if your back and your hips are okay, you can just squat over that damn bowl. And the intention again is to stimulate blood flow to those areas, so creating more sensation to numb areas, also for fertility and for cycle regulation, hormone balancing, reconnecting to your body, reconnecting to your etheric body and your fucking pussy power. So many reasons. It goes hand in hand with the body work that I do. And I tell you, getting the trademark through for cunt tea was pretty exciting in and of itself. And I used the goddess Kuntea as a model to push that through.
I can just imagine the people on the other end receiving that request and then just being, hold up, what is this? Yes, it would have been a very entertaining day in the people approving that. You are doing so much. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to be hugely beneficial for people to learn about this if they haven't heard of it before, and to go out and to explore their opportunities in that space. But as you've described too already, and your other work, incredibly complex, exciting, passionate businesses. Where do you get started, and what challenges do you face in marketing all three of these offerings?
Or that's a challenge that constantly shows up, that constantly needs to be reinvented and reworked, and checking in on messaging. Word of mouth is one of my most powerful tools. When people have worked with me and they understand the nurturing and the safety that I hold through all businesses, whether it's bodywork or whether it's nurturing through your storytelling, I don't think there's many others out there who put as much energy and time into keeping you feeling safe and nurtured and held through those processes. So word of mouth is amazing for me, because these people feel loved and held and seen, which is the whole point. And then, of course, social media, I have got very clever with what words I can use, what words I can't use, and then that changes, and then I have to adapt that and go, oh, I've got a Facebook ban again, whoops-a-daisy. And I just get very cheeky and trust that whoever needs to find me will. But it's constant. It's certainly a big part of all businesses, particularly when we've got a new book and we're calling in new humans in to share their stories, especially when they're vulnerable stories. It can take a little while. Often people need to see something 2 or 3 times before they have the courage to take that leap of faith. Same with bodywork, yoni massage. Is it even a thing? And then they might stalk you for a little while, and then they might reach out and be like, hey, can you share? So it's a process.
You touched a little bit there on allowing people to find you and the trust that you have in that process. What role does intuition play in your businesses?
It's everything. If I didn't wear shoes, I would be the most ungrounded person. Look, for as long as I can remember, I have been led and made decisions based on intuition and the deep connection to my truth, the intention of why I'm here and who I'm here to serve, right back to when I was carrying my babies and birthing my babies and how to raise my babies, and then how that translates into business. Every decision that I make, yes, there has to be something practical in there. I need to have structure and processes and practicality, but once the foundations are laid, it's all about moving with the flow. It's all about letting the chaos of the feminine unfold, and I have complete trust in that.
And how does that play out into finances as well, and the trust that money flows?
Having procedures and structure in place so that people, 1, can pay me, 2, have to pay me, and being available as much as possible, but having those boundaries and remembering that, yes, I'm very giving and very charitable and compassionate, but also this is a business and this is my family that I'm providing for there, and I don't have anybody backing me up. So really creating those boundaries and being okay with that's something that's taken a really long time to feel okay with. If, for example, if somebody's not paying, feeling okay with asking them, you need to pay me now. You've had the goods, you've had the services, you need to pay me, and eliminating that crossover as much as possible, and obviously trying to do those exchanges beforehand. Whereas before, if somebody didn't pay me, I would be rocking in a corner with so much, the shame around our money stories, and the shame of asking, and the shame of, well, maybe my service wasn't, she didn't get the value out of it, or maybe they didn't enjoy the process, and having all of these old stories and old bullshit coming up where you're like, nah, they've signed a contract, they need to pay you for your work. And that's something that definitely still pops up from time to time. And the deeper I go into business and the more that we expand. 6 months ago, Jade's come on board as a partner and my beautiful VA. So, we have a team and we have an established structure to our business, and therefore there's people to sort of back it up, where I'm not just going in this one woman show and being like, oh, does it really matter if I don't get that $500 or all those stories. But when we're working as a team and we're expanding and we've got a vision of being over here and how many people we can reach and why and all the rest of it, then yeah, those boundaries are super, super important. It's definitely a process, because if I could do this work for free, I would, that's a really cool thing too. Somebody asked me not that long ago if I won. There was like a $100 million lotto in Perth, right? And someone was like, what would you do? And I would still be doing this work. Maybe not so much. I maybe wouldn't be pulling my hair out, losing sleep over it. I'd maybe have a better team supporting me, but 100% I would still be doing everything that I do. And that was a really beautiful moment. Like, oh, look at you sitting in your pocket, you little cute thing, you. It felt really, really good to know that all the prosperity, all the money, all the financial security in the world, and I would still want to be doing the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and it is something that stops, I think, a lot of people from pursuing or finding the thing that's going to really light them up, because the fear of not having that regular income or that foundation in which to be able to work from. But sometimes you do just need to trust that it will reveal itself if you put yourself out there, and then you do end up in a position where work feels more like fun and service and growth and opportunity. I mean, don't we all have the lotto conversation where we're like, okay, it's ours. What are we going to do first? What's happening? And same thing, I come back every single time to, there is no way on this planet I will retire to be a lady of luxury, because I can't think of any quicker way to snuff out energy, to snuff out life force, to snuff out all of the growth and potential that comes with being human, to stop working. Like, working shouldn't just be to make money and be rich, to sit around and, I don't know, get massages today. Whoa, sounds kind of fun, but you've got to have a reason, something to do. I'm reading a book at the moment. I think a lot of people would have read this book, particularly this time of the year, Ikigai, which is just so fantastic. And I think they said the number one lesson is never retire. If you want to live a long life, never retire, because you need to have that sense of purpose. That's such an interesting point.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I would definitely get a lot more massages.
100%. Oh, that'd be daily. I would definitely have a chef. Like, I mean, that would be.
Oh, yes, a chef. Oh, yeah.
That would be very nice.
Quarterly holidays, maybe.
Yeah, homes around the country. I mean, we could do this all day. So
yeah. And look, there's that 100 million gone.
Yeah, exactly right. We're right back to working. Exactly. How do you know how to manage where your energy should go in terms of focusing on your businesses, which one at what time at any given time?
I've learned this one the hard way also, and it's boundaries. Because I could literally be working till 1, 2 a.m. every single day. And there's no benefit in the long term to me, because obviously I burn out. There's no benefit to my family because I'm not present with my family and I'm burnt out. And it didn't, working around the clock like that didn't actually bring in any more money. It was really about learning how to work smarter and not harder, and how to stop overgiving and under earning, essentially. So having those clear boundaries, I tend to focus at the start of the week on publishing, and then I do body work the last couple of days of the week. And sometimes on a Friday I have a day off, which is more like, cleaning the house, doing Mount Washmore, 3 or 4 loads of washing, and just going, we're a nudist family now. No more. And yeah, managing that time. It's been trickier with the publishing and moving into more international clients, having to really have boundaries and set time aside for those international calls and things, points of connection. But I'm also really loving that. And yeah, just being clear, knowing that the input has to match the output. So if I'm spending 20 hours a week giving, I need to be matched in receiving in some way, shape or form, whether it's, taking that time to have my walk with my dog in the morning, and that's setting me up for the day. It's my movement, it's my mindfulness, and it's a connection and a job ticked off the list for my beautiful dog. It's an hour for me. And seeing it like that and treating it like that is a way to really drop into the intention for the day. Just little things. I definitely don't have as many massages as I could or should or want to. I definitely don't have as many, Reiki sessions as I should or could or want to. But I'm aware. And I think having that awareness and at least scheduling those things in once a month or once every 2 months, and keeping on top of that, keeping clear on the boundaries. Am I available to answer your call at 10 p.m? Hell no, I am not available. I have a life too, and it's really important. I've been through far too many burnouts, far too many panic attacks, far too many mental breakdowns, and I know better.
Amen. You mentioned something there. So, starting to deal with international clients and writers, it just triggered for me how complex the publishing industry must have been to learn for you through that process. I know you mentioned you had an amazing mentor, but I can just imagine that the ins and outs and the practicalities of going from idea to contributors to actually putting a book out into the planet must have been really overwhelming.
I crack myself up. I really do. 100% diving into these things and then just going, I have no idea. I have literally no idea what the fuck I am doing. And just being in it and being teachable, being willing to learn, being willing to make mistakes, being willing to show up and apologize for any mistakes that are made. I've got no problem with my humanness. I make mistakes all the time, and I'm quite happy to be honest and vulnerable and show up in those spaces, because I think that builds trust and rapport with clients too. And they know that they can then be honest and open and respectful to me as well. And then, we've worked with clients in New Zealand, in Canada, in the US and in the UK now. And hopefully that will continue to expand as well. And it's so exciting. And it is such a learning curve. And I just crack myself up and pinch myself. I'm like, is this even my fucking life? Like, who the fuck are you? Seriously. And I get that, I get that from friends and family who've maybe known me as a child in Scotland, or friends that I've grown up with here, and they've gone through marriages and children and divorces and other failed relationships. And then on the other side of that, they're like, who the fuck are you? I'm like, I don't even know, but how good is it? Like, how juicy is this? What am I going to be doing next year? What am I going to be doing in there? Like, I don't know, but I'm here for it. And I think I'm always looking for those opportunities just to flex those new muscles and to experience new things. I'm like super, super hungry, so hungry to see how far I can push my limits and see how far I can push how I serve and get the word out there and get people's voices out there. And yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I couldn't love that anymore. And I think it's actually a really important lesson in there too, back to maybe it's the dopamine addiction again, but once you start learning and seeing what you're capable of, I think that the fear that stops so many people from getting started in the beginning is, I don't know how to do that thing yet. Yeah, that looks really fun and it looks like something that could be right for me, but I don't know how to do it yet. And so they stop themselves because, well, I'll just do this course, I'll learn this and I'll keep, going with this day job or whatever it is, what needs to happen so that when you go and do the thing, it's perfect and it makes sense to everybody else. Oh, makes sense for Laura to be a publisher now because I saw her go through that course or I saw her go through that journey. So, we wait for all of that to fall into place, but really it is just the process of going, that thing, I pick that. Let me now learn all of the steps and bugger if it makes any sense to anybody else. I'm just going to go through the steps and make it happen. It sounds like you've got some great people around you, but I think it's an important lesson to drive home for people. You just do not have to know this stuff before you can be as many versions of yourself as you want to in business.
I think if we waited for things to be perfect, we'd never do anything. I know that if we waited for everything to be perfect, we would never do anything. Make the decision and then let the universe respond. And I think that's where that trust in my intuition, that where my big giant balls come from. I just trust. I make the decision, the opportunities, the doors open. Sometimes I say yes and sometimes I go, no, it's not really for me. And when I say yes, I just trust that the universe will align, and it fucking does. It does. But still scary.
Oh yeah. Out of interest, do you subscribe to the Human Design Study?
I've dabbled.
What are you? What type are you? I'm a manifesting generator.
I'm a manifesting generator too.
I knew it.
Yeah. Like a 5'1".
I'm a 6'2".
Yeah.
I have much to learn about this space, but in terms of call and respond and gut instinct, and that is something I'm really tapping into more and more now that I understand. But when you do start to learn about how your personal composition is and that you are somebody who needs to allow answers to come to them once they make a decision about things and trust that the universe unfolds, once you know that about yourself, once you see it play out a few times and that trust muscle gets developed, it does get a little bit like, oh, okay, let me just see this. I'm just going to think and see if something comes back in because it feels right. It's actually a very exciting place to play.
It is. And I definitely, having that response, like I throw things out there and I'm like, if I get 10 people sort of nod their head at this, then I know it's a fuck yes. Mm-hmm. If I dangle the carrot and nobody says anything, I'm not going to put any energy into it. I need to be able to bounce off that need and that want and that desire, right?
And that's the thing, you can just put things out there to a network and be like, hey, what do you think about this? I think so often we just get hung up on it being like, okay, that's my one passion and I'm going to do this one thing. It's going to make sense to everyone. And ta-da, life is sorted. But no, just drop stuff out there. See what response you get back. If everyone thinks it's weird, who cares? Do it anyway.
Everyone thinks it's weird. I'm definitely doing it. That's my other rule.
I love that. On the other side of things, how do you know when is the right time to walk away from something or to pivot away from something?
That's very intuitive as well. And about 2 or 3 times a year, I sit down because I'm a person who tends to have, 17 projects on the go at once, right? So I do sit down a few times a year and I write down everything that I'm doing and everywhere that my energy is going. And then I rate it. This is a really, really great process, actually. Mm-hmm. And I do teach this to clients too. And I give it a rating out of 10. And anything that's not a 9 or a 10 out of 10, it's time to let it go. And sometimes there's a real grieving process because, that thing could have been epic and been my bread and butter and served so many people. But my energy's, it's drifting into this now and it's moving elsewhere and really making peace and grieving the death of something while I'm opening to the opportunity of something new. And literally, if it's not a 9 or a 10 out of 10, I fuck it off.
Oh God, I love this. I just went through a process of removing things from my to-do list. So removing projects and things I
Yep.
had taken on that I had lost the energy for. Because it's a thing when you lose the love
Yep.
for something and you're not just driven by something bigger than yourself to be able to like keep going. And it doesn't mean that it's easy every time, but when you lose that energy for something, getting rid of it is, no matter how frustrating it is to even get rid of, how many people you have to explain it to or whatever. God, it
Yeah.
feels good.
Yeah. And like having that chat with yourself and being like, babe, you have a choice. You don't have to just do it because it's what you do, it's what you've always done. If you don't love it, let it go. Like giving yourself that permission and really embodying and feeling that and being like, holy fuck, I get to choose. I get to choose the things that I create and put my energy into. It's like, it's a total game changer. And you're right, it isn't always easy. And sometimes, you do have to let people down, or you're not meeting people's expectations, but you got to go for it. You're only here for a short fucking time.
Thinking back to the Laura at 26, so accomplishing all of the things that she thought she wanted, the family life was settled, you were done then. What do you wish you knew back then?
I wish I knew how to use my voice. I wish I loved myself more and took the time to really appreciate the value that I hold as a person, just simply from existing and not needing to have validation, not needing to destroy myself in order to receive love, or so many things, and just being able to speak up and use a voice and have a voice and not being afraid. That would have changed a lot. But also I have this amazing little family. I almost have teenagers, which terrifies me. I forget that I'm not 19 anymore. But I have this beautiful family, and I don't, they possibly wouldn't be here had I had the giant balls that I have that I have now. It's like everything else. Would I change anything? Probably not. I maybe would make slightly different decisions rather than doing everything the fucking hard way all the time. But I feel like I'm there now. So I got there eventually. But certainly having a voice, using that voice and doing the things that light me up, and actually seeing the value and having love for myself rather than giving my power away.
It's a really wonderful answer, and it does take time, takes energy, takes experience, but it's a wonderful answer. On this journey, the support of others is just so incredibly important. Using your network to help you learn things, whether it be your mentor that came into your life, that community aspect, it's so important. So my final question to you is, how can the listener and I support you on your journey as your new community here?
Look, the way you can best support me is by supporting my beautiful authors, is by getting their stories, reading their stories, feeling inspired by those stories, sharing those voices, using your own voice, sharing your own voice. Maybe you have a story that you want to contribute to, or your own story that you want to write, and you're not quite sure how to do that, or you feel like you're not quite ready, or you're feeling that, the pangs of that growth zone. Let's have a chat. Let's see what we can do and create. Start connecting to your body, taking time to love the pieces of yourself that maybe you've forgotten how to love or never knew how to love in the first place. Learning how to nurture and hold yourself, learning how to invite pleasure into your world. Go and do some research on yoni massage. Reach out. If you're around Australia, I know many yoni massage therapists who would love to support you and get their little hands on you. Otherwise, you can find me and my online courses and trainings and whenever I'm over east through lauraelizabeth.com.au or through mavenpress.com.au for all publishing discussions. But yeah, I think more than anything else, encourage each other's voices, encourage each other to love one another, to connect, to touch, to love, to share. It's all about the connection. It's all about how can we all support each other and create this epic movement of powerful but gentle women, a force to be reckoned with.
There's a poster behind you that says, I believe, Rising the Matriarch. And yes, let's get right around that. Thank you so much, Laura. I will make sure to have the links to all of your incredible offerings in the show notes so that the listener can go click straight through, get in touch with you, support your work, put their voices out there, and get around to all of the things you are doing. It was such an immense pleasure to spend this time with you today. Thank you for sharing your work and your journey so openly with me. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy to connect and to chat with you. And I know that was probably a lot. I look forward to connecting more and hearing what your listeners have to say too.
It was the perfect amount of a lot, and I just loved it. It's my favorite brand name to date. I'm going to remember that forever.
I'm going to send you some Kuntea, Kim.
Yes, please. Thanks so much. One quick thing. If you're hearing this, you've listened all the way through. Hopefully that means you really like this podcast, because it's pretty generous to give up 40 odd minutes of your time for it. If that is the case, please leave the show a star rating and a review. It helps me reach so many more people who might also listen all the way through and get some benefit and some support out of it. Not to mention, it puts a real spring in my step to read them. Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the stories of starting over with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review, and of course, join the community on Instagram and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid. See you there.